Jamie Brindle, wow, such a pleasure to be speaking with you. Tell me, how have you been?
I've I've been good. It's been a busy year so far. We're doing all kinds of cool stuff with freelancers this year. We just had our first ever live freelancer meetup here in LA. We're going to be doing those nationally and having so many awesome conversations with freelancers that are up to some phenomenal things this year. I think, obviously AI is a big deal. Obviously,
Oh man.
there's all sorts of technology now available that's making freelancers are making some serious strides with, and it's just an exciting time to be building something for yourself.
For sure, for sure. Now, I know we were speaking a little bit beforehand about your freelancer event that happened recently. Tell me about how, see, here's the thing with my issue with these networking events, because some of them feel very pushed and very like, I feel like I have to make this connection. But whereas you were speaking about it, it was very authentic. How did you make it that way?
I mean, I think just the same way that we, started making content on Instagram, as we just made the thing that, Jamie 10 years ago would have wanted, right? So it was just like leading with, hey, I know how rigid these events can be, and I know, how difficult it is to know who you should be talking to, what you should be talking
Mhm.
about. So, we kind of grouped people together at the beginning to give it that structure, but then, within the next 20, 30 minutes, we open up the floor and everybody can talk to everybody, and, we got rid of all the rigidity. So it was
Yeah,
just kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
a hybrid of the two, and I think, it worked out pretty well.
For sure. And that authenticity comes through very clearly through your Instagram when you're just giving freelancers tips and tricks. Now, did you first start off just posting videos like, listen, these freelancers need to know some of these gems. Let me just put my face on the screen, tell them how it is, make a couple skits. How was that the beginning of for your business or how did that work out?
Yeah, I mean, my wife is my business partner, and we were sitting in the office trying to think of ways to scale our freelance business, right? Because we had already scaled by raising our prices pretty substantially. We had already scaled by bringing in subcontractors, so that we could increase our workload, our client base. And now we were, taking a look at productized services and digital products and things like that, looking at social media as an engine to drive that effort. And
Mm-hmm.
we were thinking, well, do we build something for our clients, for the B2B customers that we usually work with, or do we take, some byproduct of what we do with our agency work, and build something for our fellow practitioners? And it was around 2020 when everybody was losing their jobs, and people were really
Yep.
concerned about what the future held, and we just looked at each other and thought, we've got an asset here, and just kind of the experience of running this freelance business. Let's just share that. Let's just share that experience, and let's just kind of give answers to the folks who are maybe a little concerned about what lies ahead, and get them excited. Whether they were pushed out or left on their own fruition. Something
Mm-hmm.
marvelous has just happened, and I wanted to let them know that there is nothing but great things ahead. Just do these one or two things to save yourself some heartache, and let's get going. So that's how
Yeah.
it started.
How long have you been freelancing for? Are these helping freelancers?
I've been freelancing since I was 17. I'm
Oh
35
wow.
now, so somebody who's better at math than me. That's how long I've been freelancing for. And we've been
Hmm.
helping freelancers since 2020, so 5 years. I can do that math.
You can do that math. Oh my gosh. So you're very like invested in just, and you can probably see the evolution of how freelancing has changed within the decade. What are some, I guess, key moments or key factors that were like pivotal moments to you? Like, okay, this is where this business is going.
Oh yeah. Well, social media wasn't a thing. Like when I got started, Facebook was a place where you actually just like hung out with your friends. Where you just kept your friends and family, updated on your life, and you still needed a college email to get in. So social media was not the asset then that it is now. I remember making video presentations for clients to try and explain to them the value of digital video. Like that's something that you even need to say today, right? It's like
Right?
that's what everybody's asking for.
Hmm.
But I would say social media was the big one, right? It's where you go to build lasting relationships. I mean, you talk about our networking event in person, right? That used to be the only avenue. That's the only way to build the network, right? Was
Hmm.
one to one at an event like that. I would go door to door at strip malls, in my hometown. But now you can do this kind of one to many approach to networking, and it's deadly when it comes to scaling a freelance business or generating leads. There's so much, and I think a lot of freelancers don't want to get into the content game. Don't fancy themselves influencers, so to speak. They don't want to get out there and put themselves on camera. And I, as callous as it may sound, my response is like tough luck, because like this is where
Yeah,
business
that's
is
what you have
going.
to do at this point.
Yeah, it's like,
Hmm.
20 years ago it was mail-in flyers and newspaper ads. Like if you wanted people to know what you're up to, that's how you did it. Or it was an
Yep.
email campaign. It's like now it's this, right? And it will be something else 20 years from now, but that's just the game of
Hmm.
business.
That's literally the game of this business. And I know a lot of musicians as well. They're like, I don't want to be in front of the camera. I don't want to do X, Y, and Z for this content game. But I'm like, you got to do what you got to do. You see
Yeah.
what the musicians today are doing, so you got to kind of get up to speed with that.
Yeah.
How do you see AI being, or artificial intelligence, either being something that's helpful to freelancers or something that's very negative to freelancers? What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I'm super optimistic about AI, and I think a lot of freelancers are, though I do find myself in a few arguments in the DMs on this particular matter, because I know that some folks are concerned. They're looking at this AI thing with a fair amount of consternation about what it means for them and for their business. But I think, as was the case throughout history, I mean, we take this all the way back to, medieval times. It's any time a new piece of technology came out that could replace an entire swaths of the workforce. It was the people that leveraged that technology that did just fine, right?
Mhm.
It was when plows were invented. Like it wasn't plows didn't replace farm hands. It was farm hands that learned how to use plows that replaced farm
Facts.
hands,
That's a
right?
fact. That's
Uh,
a fact. Just
to
another
make it
tool.
a little more relatable, it's when Photoshop first came out, it was all the graphic designers were saying, well, great, there goes my industry, because
Mhm.
what client is going to want to pay me to make this work for them when they could just put this floppy disk in their computer and design it themselves? And of course, we know now how that worked out. Is the same client that didn't want to learn how to paint and draw also didn't want to learn how to use Photoshop to paint and draw,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And that's exactly what's going to happen with AI. It's a new brush with which you can paint with. It's a new asset that you can use to solve problems for your customers. And at the end of the day, that's all business is. It's the exchange of money for solutions to problems. Like, I think too many
Mhm.
people get that confused, and they think, okay, I'm a designer, or I'm a filmmaker, or I'm a photographer. Clients are paying me to take pictures, and that's not what they're paying you for. What are they using those pictures to then go do? What problem are you solving with those pictures, right? And we're now seeing the emergence of an era where it's so much more about that, so much more about the idea, and the strategy, than it is about the implementation. And I think that maybe bums some people out that are really excited, really enjoy the implementation part. But I think there will be space for that too, for sure.
Yeah, that's a rather positive outlook, and I do appreciate hearing that because I'm so used to hearing like the negative part, especially somebody who's in the creative field and like hearing about video editing through AI, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, are you taking my job right now? But
Yeah,
then I look at the edits and I'm like, oh, actually, you're not, because that looks like crap.
yeah,
There's no
exactly.
human touch to it. So I do like the optimistic approach to artificial intelligence.
It's like, yeah, for video editing specifically, right? I mean, we encourage all the people on our team to use AI to make their lives easier, right? But like a video
Mhm.
editor, could just treat it like an assistant editor, right? Let that thing do your line cut for you. Let that thing parse through
Yes.
footage. Let that thing
Hmm.
read transcripts and suggest, hey, at this at 3 seconds, whatever in this clip, you might want to pull that line out, and then over here in this clip, there seems to be a good moment. The stuff that used to take you, 8 hours to get through is now kind of an hour, 30 minutes of effort with AI, and then you can get to the good
Yeah.
stuff, the stuff that only you can do.
And just perfect it and make it
Yeah,
better and better. And having the now you have the time for it.
yeah.
So let's talk about your freelancing program. Tell the audience a little bit about that. I know you went into it with your about how your wife, also the co-founder and your business. Um, you just talk a little bit about it and how have let us know if there's any common challenges that you see freelancers face today.
Yeah, so our freelancing program it's part course, part community. The community part's really the important part. I mean, talk about AI. If you want to know what I have to say on any subject, you can just ask AI, hey, what does Jamie say about pricing? You get your answer, right? But for us, it's the community and the accountability that's the important part, and kind of crowdsourcing, insights from a community of fellow freelancers. We've got over 1,000 freelancers in there, and someone will post an email from a client and say, "Oof, okay, what do I do here?" And then everybody
Hmm.
jumps on in the comments. It's like, "Oh, try this and say that." So that's really fun to see. But in terms of like what freelancers seem to be coming up against the most often, I'd say pricing is a big one. They figuring out exactly how they should be pricing their services. Um, Sales, obviously. I mean the number one issue, I would say, is lead generation. They all want to know where the leads are, right? How do I go find
Hmm.
a client? But then once you go find them, if you don't know what to do with them, it becomes problematic. So sales, I would say, is another big one. So that's what I'd say. Pricing, sales, and lead generation would probably be the top three.
Another co-founder of Vouch App, he's talked to me about the statistics behind freelancers and what they usually go through. And I think this was taken in New York City, all the research,
Okay.
but about 62% of freelancers reported losing income at least once due to a client's refusal to pay.
Oh,
And an overwhelming amount of 91% of freelancers have encountered late payments, including myself, many, many, many times.
yep.
So do these numbers surprise you, and why or why not?
Um, no, they don't surprise me. I think probably because they're lessons that everybody seems to need to learn, and hopefully only once. But oftentimes, these are problems that you can get out in front of and never have to deal with again. And when
Mm,
you're first, engaged in a freelance venture, you're not protecting yourself the right way. You think maybe a contract is going to do it or something like that, and we can talk about why that's not the right way to protect yourself. And then B, I think at that stage in a career, folks tend to, uh, I want to be super fair here because it takes a lot of bravery to do something on your own, and so like that, you're a badass just from the beginning of a freelancing journey. So I want that caveat. But it is at the beginning you tend to approach this freelancing thing from kind of a place of scarcity, like a scarcity mindset, and you think,
mm,
despite the red flags that are obviously, being shown, you got to say yes to this job, right? Because you need the money and you don't know when the
mhm.
next job's coming. And so I think a lot of freelancers get themselves into trouble on the payment front as well because they engage with folks that they know they probably shouldn't be engaging with, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about both of those, right? As succinctly as possible, is to try and save some folks some heartache. Let's see if we can get that 62% down or whatever it was. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
First and foremost, a contract isn't going to save you in this situation, because you got to enforce it, right? It's not a magical document where if somebody says, if somebody signs it, then you can reach into their bank account and get the money, right? They can disappear on you just as much if they signed a contract or not. You can hire a lawyer, take them to court, if it's even worth it in terms of how much money they owe you. Go see a judge 6 or 7 months from now, and then that gets prolonged. It's a
Oh,
whole
brother.
process, right? So like a contract isn't a magical document because you got to enforce it. The magic, the way you make sure you get paid on time is you don't work until you're paid, right? It's you, and that doesn't mean you need the entire payment up front, but you should be getting paid before each stage of work is completed, right? So that means starting with a deposit so that, when don't hit go on the project until you have 50% in your bank account, right?
Mhm.
Don't And even if they say, oh well, it's a net 30, it's a net 45, go cool. We'll get started in 45 days then. I'm excited, and you let me know if that comes any sooner, we'll get started then. I can't tell you how many times I've said that and the payment magically arrives the next day, right?
Wow.
Yep, it's like magic. It's it's
Yeah.
it's like they invented this thing called wire transfers for a reason. Um, and and then halfway through the project, say it's a big project, and there's okay, now we're getting into production. We finished pre-production. It's time to do production. Get another disbursement before you hit go on that part of the project, right? So the
Mhm.
objective is to get as much money into your account before the final deliverable, right? And never deliver until the last payment comes in.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
that's how you protect yourself truly is by getting paid before each stage of the work is done.
Oh man, yeah, these are gems that people definitely have to hear, especially new freelancers as well.
Yeah,
I do like the what you talked about before, which is like having that scarcity mindset.
yeah.
And I feel like that's very true for a lot of beginning freelancers. Does that mindset evolve as time evolves and like more practice with the work, or do you have any special words to just magically let it disappear?
I mean, we could try. I would say that every year, millions of new businesses are formed, and you could live comfortably off of 3 or 4 clients.
Mm,
So I would say the odds are in your favor that you're going to find some better clients, right? And
yeah.
it's just it's get the beauty, like the whole reason to do this. The beauty of the freelancing lifestyle is that it's choose your own adventure. You're writing the
Yep.
story, so it's like you don't have to deal with the toxic boss. You don't have to deal with the toxic client. You've got freedom. So you just go ahead and get rid of them. And just go ahead and I've been blessed that I haven't had many toxic clients. I've had, one or two, and
Oh.
my preferred method of getting them out of my life is to price them out of my life. you know,
That's nice.
on the next project, I'll just quote, 20 times what I would quote somebody else.
Wow.
And it's like if they can't afford it, that's it. We part
Yep.
ways, and if they can't afford it, then I can hire someone else to deal with them. Uh,
Wow.
so
I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna put it in my back pocket because that's
yeah,
actually smart. Smarter
yeah.
than just being like, actually, I don't think this is gonna work out anymore. Sorry, yada yada yada. No, run me some money.
Yeah, exactly,
If
exactly.
you have it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So with these toxic clients, what are some initial red flags that you see often?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say, like right off the bat, probably the like no, like hands down, like this is we're not going to work together would be if they treat their people or my people poorly, right? So it's like
Mhm.
if you witness them or they are talking to you about an event or something, and you just go, ugh, like that's a deal breaker for me, right? And that's probably the only deal breaker. Everything else I give a little grace and I do a little exploration, right? The next one that would require some exploration from me would be if I get the sense that they're going to micromanage the ever living shit out of this project, right? That
Mm,
they're not a good collaborator. And the grace that I give there is that a lot of the time entrepreneurs or small business owners are used to having to do everything themselves, and if they're bringing you in, maybe you might be one of the first big spends of their company or something like that. They might need to learn a little bit. that what got them here isn't going to get them there, and it's about putting them at ease, and really helping them understand that, hey, you hired me to solve this problem for you, so you can go solve other problems. Like, I got
Mhm.
this one's off your plate,
Mhm.
and I don't mind having that sit down with them. But or in a corporate with a corporate client, they have their own stresses, right? Where it's maybe they've got a boss that's breathing down their neck, and that's getting transported over here to this project, And if
Yeah.
that's the case, I identify it and I call it out. And again, as a strategic partner, I'm just trying to help you out here. Like, we got this. Do you need help? Do you need help communicating this to your boss? I can send you weekly updates. I can send you whatever. Give them the assets to help them with that. So I think, like, but if it's not one of those situations, that's probably a red flag, right? If they don't
Yeah.
they don't cool it, on the micromanaging. Maybe that they're a one project client. I would say that those would be the two would be, to look out for. Probably the last one would be if it's, there's like some real hardball going on with price negotiation, right? With the fee.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't mind negotiating. I'll negotiate the scope of the project, never my fee. But
Mhm.
some people, like, really revel in hey, prove to me why you're worth this much money, and all that stuff. And that's conversation's a non-starter for me. It's
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
I'm offended by it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
For you, I'm offended by
It
it.
just it signals that they're not thinking about this correctly, right? It's that, hey, this isn't about the money, it's about the value, right? It's you give me money, I give you more money. That's what's
Mhm.
happening here. And if they don't
Yeah.
understand that, then you can only assume that there are going to be plenty of uh, uncomfortable moments, or not fun moments during that project. You can just go ahead and get it out of your life before it's too late.
Yeah. What are some tips you can give freelancers who are negotiating their price?
Yeah, that's good. For when it comes time to talk money, um, the most important thing is you say the number, right? That's two most important things. Firstly, you say the number and you present it in the form of a bracket, right? So you don't
Mhm.
say this is going to cost you $10,000, yes or no, right? You say, based on everything that we've just discussed, based on all the success metrics that you've lined out, the goals, the magic wand, vision of this project for your business, we're looking at something between like $8,000 and $12,000, right? Is that about the ballpark that we're playing in, that you'd set
Mhm.
aside for this?
Yeah.
And then wait. That's the important. You then shut your mouth and let them talk, right? Because I think so many freelancers immediately want to fill that silence and start
Yeah.
negotiating against themselves, right? Get real
Mhm.
quiet. Let them think on it, because maybe they haven't thought about this. So give them a second, and then they'll say something like, yeah, that's about right. In which case you move forward, you hone in on what the exact number is, or they'll say, at you, that's way out. That's we're far apart. We were thinking maybe $5,000 for this, and to which you say, okay, well, I'm glad that number's out in the open. Let's build a version of this idea that makes sense for $5,000, right?
Mhm.
So you're not saying, okay, I think I can do it for that, right? And cutting your rate in half, essentially. You're saying, no, let's work together. Let's solve this problem together and build a version of this that makes sense for your budget, right? And
Yeah.
be ready to do that. Be ready to identify what parts of, what components of a project can be nipped and tucked, to make sense for a lower budget. But that
Mhm.
so that's the second most important. It's a bracket, and then negotiate the scope, not your fee.
So I want to pivot a little bit to just like the client relationship and just for beginning freelancers finding the perfect client. I mean, where can they look? Do they go to these networking events? Do they just hit them up on LinkedIn and be like, "Hey, you need somebody?"
Yeah, I mean, so that's the most important. Anytime a freelancer tells me they're having difficulty generating leads, my immediate assumption is that they have not done the work of choosing a niche and getting very specific about their offer, right? It's so they
Mm.
say, "Where do I find leads?" And I say, "What's your niche and what's your offer?" Right? And they don't have an answer to that question. And I say, "That's why you don't know where to find leads, because if you have gotten specific about those two things and you do have an answer to that question, then there's no question where they are on the internet. You know exactly where to find them. You know, it's
Hmm.
if you solve the problem of search engine optimization for small to medium sized toy manufacturers, then you know which subreddit to go to. You know what sales navigator search to run on LinkedIn. You know which conferences, what events to show up at, because you can do that quick search on all those fronts for small to medium sized toy manufacturers,
Yeah,
and
that is very niche. I don't know how you came up with that, but
I was trying to illustrate the point here, or if
yes,
you're
yeah,
if
yeah, yeah.
you do SAT prep work, or if you help people
Hmm.
write resumes for B2B conferences, like it's the more specificity is rewarded here. The more specific you can get about the problem you're solving and who you're solving it for, the easier a time you're going to have finding these people. And the more you're going to get to charge, because you
Hmm.
get to charge more as a specialist, right? An example I give often is, if say you're a personal trainer, and you're just getting started, and you're local in New York. We'll put it in your neck of the woods, and you go on Instagram. There's a bunch of trainers on Instagram in New York with hundreds of thousands of followers who have all these case studies, all this success, and you're thinking, how do I compete with this, right?
Hmm.
So what you could do in that situation is say, okay, I'm not a personal trainer, generalist. I am a personal trainer who only works with middle-aged executive, women in New York City, who don't have a lot of time on their hands, who just want to, who need to figure out quick diet solutions, and need to get in a quick workout, when it makes sense for them. And this is the result I get, right? Now, imagine you are a 45-year-old, COO of a company in New York who wants to get her fitness in check, and you've got these two options in front of you: an Instagram, personal trainer on Instagram who's got 800,000 followers and has been running their business for 15 years, or somebody who does nothing but solve the exact problem that you're trying to solve for, right? Suddenly, something magical has just happened. You, who have just arrived on the scene, are actually being considered against this 15-year veteran with all of this social proof, right? And it's solely based on the fact that you've gotten specific about the problem you solve. And nothing else, right? So
Yeah.
what an asset that is to your lead generation, if you can get that specificity.
For sure. Now, that kind of you kind of answered my question a little bit, but I'd like you to talk a little bit further about it because I was originally going to ask about branding and how important branding is for freelancers. But it seems like you don't even, not necessarily that you don't need a good branding to show to others, but like you don't need like 8 million followers. You know what I mean? Like you don't, it's not a necessity as long as you have your niche and that's becomes your asset.
Yeah, I mean, I grew a thriving business without a website, without social media. I didn't even have a portfolio. I would just send a Google Drive folder to a potential client with some examples that I wanted them to take a look at from things that we've done in the past, and let that drive our conversation, our sales conversation. So it really is. It's about the offer. It has everything to do with value, right? It's the same with price. When you're trying to come up with your price, right? If your offer is killer, people don't care what the price is, right? Like if I told every freelancer watching this, that I could get them 80 grand in the next two months, um, in business, and then at the end of it, I'll hand you the lead generation engine that I use to do it, but it's going to cost you 20 grand. Uh, you'd
Mhm.
go find that money. You wouldn't have a problem spending that money, right? No matter,
Yeah.
and if you couldn't find it, you'd work until you had it, and then you'd run to give it to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how valuable that offer is. So the more valuable you can make your offer, the less price even becomes a component.
Yep. Yep. Good to know. Because I be sending people my Dropbox link and I'm like, wait, I should build a website.
No, 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 no. Yeah,
Not necessary yet. I feel like I should get one soon, but as of right now, I'm doing my thing, and that's how I'm getting some of my clients too, which is great.
yeah.
So good to know I'm still on the right path.
Yeah, you're doing good. I think a website. Too many freelancers use the website too as a form of procrastination. I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me and said, "I can't wait to get started," and I go, what's standing between you and getting started right now?" And they go, "Oh, I got to get my website going." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, no, you don't. I solved that problem for you right here. Put the website down, get started. Let me know how it goes."
Go on the field and just do like make these connections too and see what clients you can have. Because, with Vouch App, we're all about word of mouth referrals. We're all about networking and
Yeah.
connecting pieces together. In terms of like your own personal life, professionally, how has networking affected you and how has word of mouth referrals helped play a role in your success?
Networking, I mean, I think that I'm going to take the long road to answering this question, but
Please.
give me some grace here. I think that social media uh, has kind of done this thing for freelancers where it's convinced freelancers that they have to optimize their business the way that a large B2C business does with, like, optimizing for uh, you know automation and growing at scale and all these things. And really what that's doing is it's robbing the freelancer of their advantage, right? And I think that the principal advantage of a freelancer is the network. It's
Mhm.
there are some. It's something like, and fact check me on this. You can put it on the description after. Something like 80% of freelance jobs are handed out at the networking level. So if you're not optimizing for growing your network and for building your network, and you're only optimizing for social media, or you're only optimizing for search engine optimization or job markets, or what the internet has to offer on this front, then
Mhm.
you're resigning yourself to competing over that remaining 20% that wasn't handed out at the network stage, right? I mean,
Uh,
you think about when you need to hire somebody for something, the first thing you do is you ask, who do I know that could solve this problem for me? Who do I know, who do I trust that could solve this for me? And if you don't have anybody, the next thing you do is, well, does anybody I know anybody? Right? That's the next. Does anybody I trust anybody to solve this problem for me? And only after you've exhausted those two efforts do you then go to the internet and go see, what Google has to say on the matter, or what Fiverr or Upwork or LinkedIn has to say on the matter. So it's
Mhm.
and, not or, right? You should be doing both. But if you're ignoring network, you're setting yourself up for trouble. I think you'd be growing at a much slower pace than if you didn't ignore it. And that was definitely the case throughout my career. It's, my first job came from, it was a buddy's dad's law firm, and my second job was somebody in his network, and my third job was somebody in their network, right?
Yep.
And so I very quickly sussed out that, this is how it's done. It's going to be a game of referral, most definitely. So I would say, to the freelancers watching this or listening to this, if start optimizing for network like it's your job, because it really is.
Yeah, yeah. And when it comes to cold outreaching somebody versus being in the space like organically networking, is there like do you think one is better than the other or are both equally as good? Because as long as you're trying to connect with that person.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you can come through the door validated, you're setting yourself up for success a little more.
Mhm.
I like to, the game, the 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. I like to
Yes.
do that with brands that I want to engage with, right? Or with potential customers that I like to engage with. It's how can I build a path to them through my network, so that I
Yes.
don't just, arrive in their email inbox, just, lonely little Jamie saying, "Hey, I've got a great idea for you. Let's talk." It's
Hmm.
more that way. I like to arrive in their inbox with three different people CC'd on it with serious email addresses, so that they go, okay, cool, I got to pay attention to this guy because somebody from this
Yeah,
company and this company are CC'd on this thread. So I would say that that's the best way to do cold outreach. I call it validated cold outreach, where yes,
nice.
technically it's cold, but you're validated with someone in common, a point of commonality or a mutual friend. But yeah, I mean, cold outreach, like in the purest sense, is kind of a numbers game. So ultimately, I would suggest you optimize for growing your network more organically, where it's like, okay, who do I know? Like take stock of your existing network, even if you're just getting started. Think, okay, who are my friends, family, colleagues? Where do they all work? Who do they all work with? What are they into? And kind of start building it out from there. Like start with what you got.
Mhm.
And then, once you've mastered that process, then start kind of playing the validated cold networking game.
Nice, nice. So we're almost about to wrap up. Do you have any, I guess, advice to give to freelancers who are just beginning in the game and who are just like, okay, I'm a little bit nervous. Now I know not to just procrastinate and try to build a website. Now I know I have to go into these networking events. I mean, what advice can you give to a freelancer who are a little bit introverted, a little bit nervous about going to these networking events?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, take the pressure off yourself. This is a long game. You got time to figure this out, right? So I think that, most people think, okay, well, if I don't nail this networking event, or if I mess up this outreach message, or if I blow this sales call, that's it. There goes my career, and it's that couldn't be further from the case. It's
Mm,
failure is, if you're not failing, what are you doing? It means that you're not trying anything, right? I
yeah.
had this conversation this morning in the DMs with somebody who asked me to share some of my failures that made me really like step back, and I was like, honestly, like failures make you like that's the fuel. Like it's the data that I'm collecting. It's like, okay, cool, that didn't work, I'll try this on the next one. That didn't work, I'll try this on the next one. It means that I'm doing stuff. So I would just don't be afraid of failure. Put yourself out there. And hey, if you're an introvert, or you consider yourself not a great communicator, practice on a captive audience. Next time you're in front of a cash register or something, try to make some small talk with the person who can't move the counter, right? Uh,
Hmm.
like make a point to, next time you're with your friends or family, try and have a list of interesting conversation starters just to see what people say if you bring XYZ up. Um,
Hmm.
Practice, and remember that at the end of the day, no matter who you're talking to, whether it be a potential future client or a fellow practitioner, another freelancer, it's just a human. It's a fellow human being, who also has problems that they're trying to solve, right?
Yep.
And when I started, you know, getting sitting down in these rooms with these bigger brands, you go to some intimidating offices, with really recognizable logos on the wall. You sit down in the conference room and you realize, oh no, this is just a fellow person that is going to go home after this or hit up a restaurant on their way home. Like it's just like there's nothing
Hmm.
special going on here. It's just some people getting together trying to solve a problem, right? And
Yep.
it's no different than how you engage with your friends or family, right? It's just you want to help them out, you want to see them succeed, and that's really what it is. This is a people business. There's nothing, there's no secret sauce here. Just be a human and help other humans, and that's
Be a human.
yeah,
Make sure you're not an alien. Just be a human.
yeah,
And you've worked with big companies such as like Google and Netflix, correct? How was
yeah.
being in their offices like? How did you have to, well, I guess you just said it. Just be human, right?
Yeah, yeah. I remember, I think it was the Google office in Beverly Hills where I had a real moment like that, where they had just shared with me some things about how they think about setting goals, and we sit down at the conference table and I look across the table and I thought, yeah, this guy's me. But to show you the other side of that, I had a call with a very major brand early in my career. Like I'm talking, I mean, I don't think there's a person in the world that doesn't recognize this brand, and I put them on a pedestal, and I wrote my whole pitch out on Instagram on index cards, and
Mm-hmm.
I practiced for a week, and I had this conversation, or I had this pitch where we get on the conference call, and I talked nonstop for 20 minutes, reading off of index cards, instead of just being a human and having a conversation,
Yeah.
right? And I blew it. I obviously I had never heard from him again, and that was the beginning of that education for me, where it's like, okay, maybe next time ask a question. Maybe next time ask them what they're trying to do here. You
Make
know,
eye contact,
yeah,
perhaps.
yeah. So it's that's the important, it's just let the journey happen. Embrace the
Mhm.
failures, because it's the
And
only way you're going to learn.
for sure, for
And
sure.
put it all.
Embracing the failures,
Yeah,
which I really like what you talked about too. And another question I was gonna ask before we wrapped was, what were some of your failures? I guess I could imagine that story being
that's
one
a
of
big
them.
failure. That's a big one. Yeah.
What did you learn from that failure? What were you like, okay, I'm gonna take this is the data and I'm just going to do better next time by doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, yeah. I learned, and now I do. I put on the before I get on any of these calls to this day, I put at the top of my, because it used to be I used to write. Now I've got notes on my computer. I put at the top of the note, one, listen, right? Because I want to be
Mhm.
listening, at least I want to be listening 70% of the time. I want to be asking thoughtful questions and just listening. And then two, I put some version of, what if you only had 1 hour to help these people, right? Treat this call like this is 1 hour to impact this business in a meaningful way.
Mhm.
And that takes, it's I'm not trying to say the magic words that get somebody to hire me. That's I think that's what I was trying to do with the index cards was, if I say these words in this order, they'll see my value and they'll hire me, right?
Yeah.
And really what it is, at that stage, they're not really auditioning for can you do the thing. They're more auditioning for, do I trust this person, and are they going to be, a strategic partner? Are they going to be a joy to work with? Am I going to, enjoy this process? And I think that's what that demonstrates when I make the whole call about helping them. No matter what, like I don't care if they hire me or not. They're leaving this call with some insights that they didn't have going into it. Damn it! Like that's my approach, and I gotta say, not trying to be boastful or anything, but it's a near perfect, it's a near perfect sales rate with that approach,
Yeah.
right? Because if if what I said is true, and at that stage they're auditioning you as a strategic partner, if you're already demonstrating what you're going to be like, if you're already advocating for the success of their project, no matter what, no matter if you get hired or not, you're pretty much establishing yourself as that strategic partner, from the get go.
Yep. Yep. Oh my gosh, all these gems. I can't wait to share with the audience. They'd be like, "Oh my goodness, wait a second. He's spitting right now."
Trying.
Oh, you don't even have to try, Jamie. You are absolutely wonderful, and talking to you has been such a pleasure. Just one little last question that I like to ask all of my people who I do interview. What are like at least three qualities of somebody who you would vouch for? So, for example, one of my qualities that I think of is like somebody who's hardworking.
Yep. Okay.
Hmm.
This is great. Let's see. What qualities do I want to pick? There are so many good ones. Okay. I would say, uh, an expert communicator is important. Somebody that can communicate, efficiently and effectively. Honesty, I think, is very important. Somebody who, uh, is going to tactfully, tell someone when they're, uh, you know, in the wrong.
Hmm.
If I know that you're going to tell a client, hey, I appreciate that you're saying this, but I think this is really more what you're going for. So effective communicator, honesty, and yeah, I'll say. I mean, I don't want to cop your hard worker, but like like yeah, like a diligent somebody who's got that diligence, you know, that's not afraid of you know of work. I think is a big one, right? I'm not I'm not trying to be you know promote hustle porn, but I do think that there is a little bit of you know I think some folks are shying away from that component, and it's definitely a game changer. You know, if somebody's willing to go the extra
Mm-hmm.
mile.
For sure, especially as a freelancer, you have to have that hustler mindset.
Yeah,
And I'm blessed that my family has kind of taught that too, because they grew up in a rough neighborhood. So my dad kind of instilled that on me. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'm
yeah,
a hustler now. Like, I got to do this, but I do it within my freelancing work. So those
yeah.
are amazing qualities. I'm sure you have a bunch of people that have those qualities
Oh yeah.
in your like phone or in your notebook or wherever you
Yeah,
like
yeah,
to write your
definitely,
names.
definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, Jamie, I'm not gonna hold you too long. It's nearly already 5. So thank you again for making the time to
Thanks for
just
having
talk
me.
to us, talk to Vouch, talk to me. It's been such a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. This was fun. Let's do it again soon. We'll make a whole series out of these.